Greetings, Dragon Ball fans, and welcome to part 16 of What If Vegeta Killed Gohan, where we follow along with the alternate futures Son Gohan and company as they navigate their own version of events, without the aid of Goku or Vegeta, let alone any of the numerous spectators, Z-Fighters. We have come a long way since Vegeta saw Kid Gohan's tail and sent the boy packing, so to speak. A Kaioken-infused Piccolo then killed Frieza, with Goku's help. The androids weren't quite dealt with, and the heart virus did its thing, all while Vegeta's corpse was being repurposed by Dr. Gero. 3 weeks after the lookout was shattered, Bulma finally managed to rescue Gohan, both figuratively and then mentally, with her scientific genius and emotional support. After starting to rebuild, they went back in time to try and fix things, and Goku got to see his son very much grown up, if not entirely sane from his extended stay in the time chamber. Majin Buu eventually made a dramatic entrance when Babidi saw Gohan's somewhat irrational dislike of the Kais. Using it to great effect, Buu got the energy he needed and awoke. Elder Kai was still released, but refused to unlock Gohan's ultimate potential, lest that wrath be unleashed on the universe in turn. Beerus then awoke seeking his rival, and Videl got to travel to the past to collect the Saiyans for that whole thing. With the inclusion of his younger self and his dad from the past, future Gohan discovered that his sons, Goku and Jinbei, were in fact his mentor and father, Piccolo and Goku Sr., albeit flipped around. The fun-loving but turquoise-haired Jinbei was Goku's reincarnation, while the earnest and more methodical Goku was Piccolo's. And I guess Kami's as well? How does that work? The two Zamasu showed up, and after running amok in Otherworld, they ran headfirst into the King Kai forged, Yardratian-tempered, Kaioken-wielding, and now Super Saiyan God, Gohan. After they dealt with Black and contained the immortal Zamasu, they discovered that they were unable to connect to their usual point in the past. Dialing back, they finally found a functional time, quite soon after Beerus would normally have arrived in their own time. Once in the past, that immortal Zamasu was dealt with via a time-ringless and thus unprotected temporal loop. Beerus saw the present and future versions, and Hakkai'd first the future one, then, when that failed, the past one that was destined to become Goku Black. The future Zamasu thus never met him, and never wished for immortality, so promptly fizzled out of existence, since Kai time travel doesn't seem to make new branches. Back on Earth, the future gang were filled in on things from their cell arc up, before in turn delivering their own news, in the form of a lack of anything to transit to. At some point in the next few months, everything was just gone. Unsure of the cause, past Goku had the brilliant idea to ask the people in charge, who should probably know about such things. With the aid of a side comment about the multi-universal tournament to Zeno, that tournament of power now looms into view, and the team is quickly chosen from available bodies, both present and future. The exhibition match, however, did not end on a particularly high note, especially not for Bergamo, the leader of Universe 9's Trio de Danger. His attempt to absorb Goku's fairly exaggerated, Kaioken-infused Super Saiyan Blue pushed him well beyond his normal limits, so much so that pieces of him are, even now, raining down on the arena, and Goku is left to look on in shock, and maybe a bit of horror. The splash zone was pretty big, I imagine. The first to react to this tragedy is Universe 9's Supreme Kai, Ro, though less about the fact that someone died than how dare that man break the rules. Surely such defiance as this should not go unpunished. He should be barred from entering the main tournament. The Grand Priest is less concerned, however. Bergamo had himself requested that this match be special, the deciding one in fact. If Bergamo had won, there would be no larger tournament, and the universes would be spared their more immediate annihilation. To keep things on an even keel, they had instructed Goku not to hold back. It wouldn't do to have him throw the match now, would it? A lonely and bored Zeno desperately wants his Saturday morning entertainment, after all. After considering for a bit, the Grand Priest turns to the happily smiling Zeno and asks if killing should be allowed in the tournament. Weapons and such are already not allowed, for whatever that's worth, but having to hold back like that while fighting for the fate of your universe, for your very existence? Zeno's smile falters, and he ponders for a moment, then says that that's easy, and snaps his fingers. Bergamo looks around at the arena and pokes himself a few times to make sure it's all real. He could have sworn he died, rather painfully, if mercifully quick. He's certainly not expecting the hug from his recent opponent, let alone the apology. He hadn't meant to, but he thought the guy could handle it, and he's never quite adjusted to this new Kaio thingy that his son taught him, and you guys really need to train hard for the tournament so this kind of thing doesn't happen again. After a bit of back and forth between Zeno and the GP, it is decided that killing will officially be allowed, as long as it's not malicious or intentional. Anyone who does die will be brought back to life in the stands by Zeno. Wanton slaughter and brutality, however, reflect badly on the universe, and may cause the perpetrator to be eliminated at the discretion of Zeno, the Grand Priest, and all the other angels, none of whom have any real sort of stake in any of this. So just, avoid killing if possible. The point is to throw your opponents out, not be mean for the sake of it. Your universe's mortal level will be affected by your performance, win or lose. After the exhibition match is over, they are given their time to gather and prepare. Fortunately, drawing only from a single planet, Universe 7's job is all but done. They are all set to train normally during the gathering time, but a particularly grumpy old man has other ideas. Avoiding all but the most furtive glances at Lapis, Lazuli, and Jet, who are all standing together, not to mention that silly grin on his dad's face, the older Gohan shivers a bit, then tells them to all gather at the lookout. Once there, with a visible cringe, he nods towards their still existing hyperbolic time chamber. Well, of course, they used that for the Universe 6 tournament, hadn't they? So yeah, duh. And they don't even need to go in for a full year anymore, do they? When asked why he wasn't coming too, the grey-bearded Gohan stares down at his dad for a moment, then shakes himself and says that he's been in that place long enough for a number of lifetimes. So unless there's a timer to collapse the thing automatically, no thank you. Hopefully his Videl's right hand and his younger self's co-captain, Chi, can get them all into a vaguely coordinated fighting force. As they all head off, the older Gohan goes to sit on the edge of the lookout and gaze out at the world below, just feeling all the life of it. That is, until, after seeing the others into the chamber, Dende returns and sits down next to him. It takes a while, but eventually Dende works up the courage to talk to this man from the future. A future that has another him in it? Gohan doesn't know for sure, as they've never been back to Namek, or New Namek rather, but he supposes so. Dende is also not the Guardian of Earth, by the way. That role was taken up by Kami's son, the now fused Akumu. Ah, fusion, like what Nail and Piccolo and then this Kami did. Yeah, it was pretty sad for Akumu to lose his first son after a fashion, but the effects were, well, let's call them noticeable. When Dende asks how a warrior can fuse with the Dragon Clan, Gohan has no answer. Maybe it's a father and son thing? Akujin was very much like his father, after all, so, well, he doesn't know. Is it a can't, a won't, or is it just taboo for some reason? Fusion itself is technically forbidden, isn't it? Well, if you don't try at least, you can't ever really know one way or the other, can you? Their increasingly amiable conversation about Namekian traditions and the politics of all being children of a single parent is rudely interrupted by the arrival of Universe 9's troop of assassins, who have shown up looking for Bergamo's murderer, the instigator of this deadly tournament, and seemingly the strongest of Universe 7's fighters. The assassins instead get to meet this eerily calm, if slightly irritated old man Gohan, and a confused and somewhat scared-looking Dende. Their leader gets to watch as an instant later his fodder co-assassins are all falling from the sky, unconscious. Now believing that this old man before him is probably more of a threat than their original target, given how disinterestedly he knocked the others away, the ball of destruction energy is released, and Gohan's eyebrow goes up. The purple ball stops just before the red, flaring hand, and Gohan inspects it closely, as Dende finally starts breathing again. Gohan had seen some of this universe's destruction energy, over on Goasu's planet, but he had never had the chance to examine it up close like this. With no mention of the assassins, or their fate, by the older of the two Gohans, when it is time to go to the world of Void, they gather at Capsule Corp for a final meal with everyone and the various branches of their families. Even the trio de Giraud are there, though they barely poke at their food, having little appetite. Whoa now, Jet, who is technically a Saiyan, doesn't gorge on food? Burn the heretic. No, worse. Unsubscribe from him. Well, to be fair, this guy is still one of Giraud's creations, and thus has never known hunger like a normal Saiyan would. So, did Giraud actually find a cure for world hunger? Nam and Oob's tribe would definitely like to know Giraud's location. Oh, wait, no, Oob doesn't exist in this timeline. Never mind. They arrive in the world of Void soon enough and get stuck into things. Goku, of course, runs off by himself, but for a variety of reasons, Jet is more inclined to be a team player. That time under the younger Gohans and Chi's tutelage also seems to have paid off, and the 8 of them work their way through universe after universe. 8? Well, who else is missing? Well, Goku, obviously, but also the grey-haired Gohan is staying out of the action for now. You'd be forgiven for confusing him with Jiren as he sits firmly on the ground, somewhat meditative, as he was when Zamasu and Black came up on him. Would he be floating then, just like Jiren? Perhaps, but the rules about no flying are still a thing, and Jiren was technically in violation of that when he was, floating. By the time 4 of the other universes have been wiped out, Universe 7 has only lost one member, in the form of Krillin, who still falls afoul of Frost's tail, before Frost gets ejected by a pissed-off Lazuli, and Jet, who still feels a strange urge to repay past favors that he has no memory of. The 3 children of Giraud then close ranks, and promptly wipe out an earlier appearance of Aniraza, with a combined infinite energy-fueled blast. Yep, you heard right. Jiro's clone of Vegeta has an infinite energy source buried deep in his modified cellular makeup. The Doctor may have been slightly mad, but he wasn't stupid. Inserting his mind into a body that could run out of energy was considered a terrible idea. If you're wondering about the possible plot hole of Jiro designing Cell to absorb Vegeta, who was, in turn, designed to carry Jiro's mind, it's worth noting that in the first run-through, Cyber Vegeta was actually number 21. But in this past timeline, the clone version was number 20. The Cell they faced here in the past was then from a timeline where 21 was that original, if reanimated, version of Vegeta. Not a clone, and more importantly, from Jiro's point of view at least, not destined to be Jiro's new body. Can you imagine if Jiro had managed to make the switch, only to be absorbed by his own creation from an alternate timeline? That would serve him right. Here, though, Jet and his underlying sane nature never really needed to make use of his infinite energy engine, and its now comparatively low and untrained output. After ignoring its contributions when facing Cell, that thing that had kind of eaten him, he had learned his lesson, and here and now, well, every little helps. This is also not anything like the traditional Vegeta. He lacks a certain lifetime supply of blah 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 Saiyan Prince, blah 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 Super Saiyan, blah 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 Saiyan Pride. Universe 6's own legendary Super Saiyan Kale finally emerges, drawing some interest from the two slumbering giants. Jiren cracks an eyelid and looks towards her, but stops when he sees that old-looking man standing calmly in her warpath. As she approaches to knock this seemingly minor roadblock out of her way, the man erupts in a burst of red energy and catches her blow. He twists the coat armor around behind, pinning her down, the mere act of which shatters the ground beneath them. Khalifa dives in to defend her, friend, but is thrown back by the waves of energy lashing out as Kale mindlessly struggles against the grip. She lands near her recent opponent Goku, and they both get to watch the old, strangely powerless-feeling man leaning in and whispering in the struggling Kale's ear. Eventually, Kale stops struggling and turns to look back at the older Gohan, then at Khalifa before lowering her head and punching the ground with her free hand. The older Gohan releases Kale, and is suddenly a wiry-looking, gray-haired old man again, while Kale's mass evaporates, and she falls unconscious. Gohan then makes his way back to his chosen spot, with only a slight glance at Jiren as he passes. After a few more universes are eliminated, and with their own members dwindling, an earlier fusion of Kefla is still left wanting. Since Goku has yet to touch on Ultra Instinct, the younger Gohan, who has seen much more of Super Saiyan Blue, decides to step up. He still prefers his own sort of path, following in his older self's footsteps, but for now he makes good use of his very hard-to-detect Kaioken on top of the Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan, and pushes them to the point of breaking the fusion, not to mention the earrings. The beam then carries them on and out of the arena, as the older of the two Gohans look over with a slight smile on his face. When Jiren had stirred, briefly, Goku had of course been paying attention, and still wanted to crack at that particular chestnut. He still vanishes into his own spirit bomb, though, and Zeno is suitably upset by it. He is about to snap his fingers to revive Goku and bring him back to the stands, but gets distracted by a shiny new thing. Goku still has his brush with Ultra Instinct Omen, and the older Gohan can only admire the sheer insanity of his father's new fighting ability, if not the raw power, against who he's sure will be their final opponent. When his father's new form eventually collapses in on itself, Gohan glances over at his daughter, Chi, who breaks off a clone to deploy her other Yardratian training, and spend its limited life energy recharging her grandfather a bit. There is not only some debate among the various Kais about healing being allowed, but also the fact that the one doing the healing split herself in two, effectively adding another contestant? Well, since it's just a technique, not an outside device, it's allowed. Besides, Zeno thinks it's cool, and they allowed Universe 6's Potara, didn't they? And so as Universe 6's sole remaining member, Hit, has his go at Jiren, and spotting the time cage, a somewhat tired-looking Chi appears next to her father, and quietly says, "It's time. We will bring Part 16 to a close." Do you think Gohan has something planned for Jiren? Will he play by the rules, or risk the ire of the gods to ensure a victory? How might Zeno react to having his fun ruined by this grumpy old man from a different time? Will Goku ever get to sample Ultra Instinct again? Does he even need to? Find out next time on Dragonball. What if Vegeta killed Gohan?